It's a really good time to be a One Piece fan. The anime just finished up Wano arc, which is one of the best arcs post time skip. The manga's going crazy right now with all the backstories and lore. No spoilers, of course. One Piece fans are annoying everybody on Twitter, and besides that, One Piece is pretty good right now. I'm pretty happy to be a One Piece fan. And today in the anime, we finally got the reveal of the cross-guild Bounties, and more about their organization. And truthfully, I'm not the biggest fan of it. As a manga reader, I've been wanting to talk about this since this chapter came out, but now that it's finally animated, I feel ready to talk about it. It's not just the cross-guild bounties I want to talk about. I want to talk about the bounties of Luffy, Law, and Kid. Because most of the bounties here, I disagree with. So I want to get into what my issue is and what it means for the world of One Piece going forward. But before we get into that, I'd appreciate if you guys hit the like button, show your support for the channel. I plan to make more One Piece videos going forward. How much someone's bounty is can depend on a few things. One of the things that can determine your bounty is how much of a threat you are to the world government, which is why Robin, who was only 8 years old, had a bounty of 79 million. Not because she was particularly strong, but because she can read poneglyphs. By reading poneglyphs, Robin's a huge threat to the government because she can uncover what happened in the Void Century. Another thing a bounty can be based on is how much crime someone commits. Like, if you commit a crime once, that's bad, but if you keep doing it, you're seen as a constant threat, so the government has more reason to want to bring you in. And lastly, a bounty seems to be based on how strong somebody is, how powerful they are, like the difficulty for them to be brought in. Or another way you could put it is strength. And typically, this tends to be how most of the bounties tend to work. Because if you're a criminal and the stronger you are more likely to do more crime, you are harder to bring in, and you're also a bigger threat to the world government. Because there's criminals, especially in the New World, who own their own land that the government doesn't even touch because of how powerful they are. But of the methods we've talked about, the majority of the bounties seem to be about someone's strength. And due to that, bounties have kind of worked like a pseudo power level system for the world of One Piece. The stronger somebody is, the higher their bounty is. That's just how it's worked through most of the series. When Luffy got his first bounty, we see him analyze all the people that Luffy had beat, and they made his bounty higher than all of them. However, if you look at the bounties that they're discussing, you'll notice that Captain Kuro isn't there. That's because the world government doesn't know that Luffy fought Kuro. And you'll see this at different points in One Piece, that the world government only knows so much. They control most of the countries in the world, but because of that, they don't always know about every conflict happening. And so someone's bounty may be a little bit weaker because of it. So it's not a perfect system, but it works well enough. But regarding bounties as power levels, because I think for most characters, they make sense for the power levels, but the big exceptions are Chopper, Usopp, and Buggy. The Marines don't actually know that Chopper is strong. They think he's the pet, which is why he's had the 500 berry bounty and then the 1,000 berry bounty. They don't understand that this guy is him. So it makes sense that his bounty is low because the Marines are not all-knowing. The other one being Usopp, because Usopp's first bounty was 200 million. Stop bringing up Sogeking. It's not him. It doesn't count. Due to Usopp taking down Sugar, a lot of people in Dressrosa thought he was incredible and they called him the god Usopp. And the world government heard this and be like, wow, this must be a strong person in the Straw Hats. They gave him a bounty of 200 million, even though that's nowhere near his strength level. Nami and Usopp have ridiculously high bounties in the hundreds of millions. But let me ask you a question. Do you think that Usopp and Nami now could beat Luffy back when his bounty was only 100 million? And I mean pre-Gear 2 Luffy, the Luffy that beat Crocodile. Do you think that either of them could beat that Luffy? I'd have to say no. And that's fine, because being close to the Pirate King, I'm getting ahead of myself. Being this close to a Yonko, it makes sense that your bounties just go up by association. And Buggy is the same situation as Usopp because he's not powerful at all. His bounty was 15 million at the start of the series, and even then, he wasn't portrayed as that strong. But due to the events of Impel Down and people believing that he's stronger than he actually is, also he straight up threatened Shanks and Marineford and everyone saw this. So like, due to all these misunderstanding circumstances, no one who's in charge of the stuff of the government knows that Buggy is strong. And therefore that's why his bounty was high, and that's why he had enough clout to become a warlord, and now he's an emperor. So even though these bounties are mistakes, they make sense based on what the world government knows. I don't have issue with them. What I do have issue with is bounties like Crocodile.
久しぶりだな、麦わら。
Crocodile has a bounty of 1.9 billion. And I think that's too much for him. Crocodile's been the One Piece story for a long time, and he was doing a lot of impressive things in Marineford, but I think people vastly overrate how good he was. Some people might think this bounty fits because, oh, he went up against Mihawk and Doflamingo and he cut Akainu in half, but none of that really matters. Starting in reverse order, he did stop Akainu from killing Luffy by cutting him in half, which was impressive, but Akainu's a Logia, and Logias have a very bad habit of just letting themselves be attacked because they know most people's attacks aren't actually going to hurt them. Crocodile in this same arc does the same thing when Doflamingo just cuts his head off. And while we're on Doflamingo and him clashed, but from what we've seen of Doflamingo do in Dressrosa, if they fought all the way, Crocodile would be dead. Like, Doflamingo is taking that. And lastly, Mihawk. They had this one clash here and everyone thought, yo, Crocodile, he's so powerful, he stopped the world's greatest swordsman. But Mihawk mostly just stopped because he was confused. He's like, why are you coming at me? So these are impressive But a big thing of why I don't think Crocodile is strong enough to have a bounty that's almost 2 billion is that he can't use Haki. We haven't seen enough of Crocodile from the 2-year time skip to know how much stronger he really is, but it doesn't make sense he'd be that much stronger. And I think it makes even less sense to think that he knows Haki now, because he didn't before. Pre-time skip, Luffy and the other Supernovas, they didn't have Haki, or if they did, they didn't know how to really control it. But why does it make sense that Luffy now knows Haki post-time skip and Crocodile doesn't? It's because Crocodile's been a pirate for much, much longer. Luffy and the worst generation, most of them are into their first year or just the first few years of them being a pirate. And they can conquer most places and have bounties of hundreds of millions without knowing any Haki. But like in the new world, you need to be a certain level of skill, and to survive in that world, the kind of thing you need to have Haki. I think Crocodile's bounty should be worth in the hundreds of millions if we're talking about his power level. Even though we fought Luffy at 80 million, it was a cancelled bounty. The world government has shown that they're willing to make pirates warlords with not too much fame in their career. Sometimes they see potential in someone and then make them pirates, which is why a lot of the bounties for certain warlords are low, and then after the warlord system has been cancelled, we can see people with incredibly high bounties from before, like Boa Hancock. When they gave Crocodile's bounty, they said it's because of his leadership and his Logia ability. Crocodile's ability is strong, but in the new world, Logias really are not that impressive. It's the ancient Zoans and the Paramecians that have the best abilities. Crocodile having his bounty makes sense based on his position, but it makes me feel like as a power level scaler, it's not going to be very good. I mean, for all I know, Oda could just retroactively just say, Crocodile decided he was tired of being weak and just learned Haki over the time skip. And Oda seems to have plans for Crocodile and the cross skills going forward, so he will probably scale him up. So it's not that big an issue right now, but it just bothered me a bit of how high his bounty was. But the really big issue I have with the new bounties isn't even Crocodile. It's these three. It doesn't make any sense that Luffy, Law, and Kid should have the exact same bounty. It is public knowledge that Luffy beat Kaido and Kid and Law beat Big Mom. Or at least it should be. For some reason in the papers, it says that these 3 captains took down these 2 Yonko, but there's no reason that the public shouldn't know the specifics of the fight. Scratchman Apu and Joseph of CP0, they were both present at the raid of Onigashima, and Joseph reports directly to the Gorosei, and Apu leaked the information of what happened at the raid to Big News Morgans, it's heavily implied to be. And Joseph did take off before the final fight was done, but he saw Luffy fighting Kaido 1v1, so he put 2 and 2 together. And Apu actually knows that Luffy beat Kaido. He knows the exact specifics of everything. You can make an argument that as a pirate, the world government doesn't want to trust Apu, but it seems the world government knows, or at the very least they have no reason to not know, that Luffy's the one who took them out. They try and make up for this by saying, well, Luffy is also a Yonko now. He's taking one of the positions as a Yonko. But the thing is, if you're a Yonko, why are these 2 guys at the same level as you? I just noticed this when I was making this, but if you actually add up Kaido and Big Mom's bounties, it's almost equal to the exact amount of Law, Luffy, and Kid's bounties. It's like the government just said, well, you guys did equal amount of work, so we'll just split the bounty 3 ways. When in reality, Luffy did half the work, so this should be his bounty, and these 2 could have a split bounty of this amount. To be honest, Captain Kid's kind of a fraud, so maybe he should have a lower bounty than Law, but that's a whole other video. I'm not upset that Luffy has a lower bounty than Kaido even though he beat him, just because we know that it's not as simple as just being someone taking their bounty. Even though that's typically how it's worked before in the world of One Piece, Kaido has been a pirate for quite some time. He's been a Yonko for what, maybe 20, 30 years, and he has a lot of like territory and control. So it takes some time to build a bounty like that. It does make sense that Luffy was the one named the bounty because even though Law and Kid are strong, they don't really have the forces like Luffy does. They just have their one ship. Luffy does have the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and I wish they showed them a bit more, and just so we could see Luffy's influence around the world. We saw them a bit after they're trying to call him the 5th Yonko in the papers after Whole Cake Island, but we haven't seen too much of them since these 2 at the Reverie, and Shanks said Bartolome is apparently just trying to mark Shanks' territory as Luffy. So Luffy's bounty of 3 billion and his title as a Yonko, it makes sense. Especially because we already know about these 2 areas which are under his protection. And that's the minimum. Who knows what the Grand Fleet's doing right now? Another issue I have with Law and Kid having bounties so high is just that, like, if you look at bounties that are at the 3 billion plus range, the only people who have bounties that high are literal Yonko, the best swordsman in the world, and, well, I guess there is one other person, the literal king of the pirates. And then there's Law and Kid. I guess they wanted to establish some type of rivalry between the 3 again, but I just think Luffy's bounty should just be higher. And this all kind of leads me to the fact that bounties have essentially lost relevance as a power level, but not necessarily as a narrative device for One Piece. The last truly exciting time we got new bounty reveals for the Straw Hats was after Enies Lobby, because that was the time everybody got a bounty on the crew. And it was exciting to see people's bounties and kind of power levels portrayed by these bounties. We got the reveal of what the highest bounties are in the entire pirating world, and that removes a little bit of mystery to them. I am glad to know that, but now the like mystique of like, oh, who's this character and what their bounty is. We kind of know the bounty of every major player in One Piece except for Shanks' crew and Dragon. The cross guild does make the bounty system a bit more interesting, because instead of bounties on pirates, they put bounties on the Marines. So you can kind of have like a numerical value to see like, well, this person's worth 3 billion and their cross-skill bounties worth 3 billion, they're about the same power level. And that is kind of interesting, but truthfully, we already had a system like that with Marines with their ranks to kind of tell the power level, like, oh, this person only captain, he's a vice admiral. Admiral level was a very big thing. I still like the cross-skills implementation because they're doing crazy things to just shake up the world of One Piece by essentially turning citizens against the government. So I can't really hate on it. Honestly, even the bounties outside of power levels, they're not as exciting to get into now. Oh my god, imagine if Luffy's bounty goes up to 3 billion to 5 billion. It's like, yeah, whatever. I think in One Piece, we're probably gonna see Luffy's bounty rise once, maybe 2 more times. And I don't think it's gonna be that interesting. I mean, I think if Luffy's bounty surpasses Gold Roger's, who has the highest bounty of anyone in history, I think that'll be pretty exciting. But besides that, bounties are kind of run their course. Well, that is all I have to say. If you have any issues with any of the issues I have, let me know. Or if you also have bounties that you see which you just disagree with, let me know in the comments down below. I'm LeeTSimba, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.